at that point there, Mr. Newton had already killed Mr. Voynev, fled the scene of that location, was now out there being investigated by the New Haven Police Department and others, but then gets involved in this separate shooting incident thereafter. So we also have somebody who 7 or 8 years later probably knows by now that he's responsible for the homicide of another individual, but he's still armed with a gun and he's still shooting at other people.
Outside of this felony murder, for which you're asking us to reduce the time, you had other charges, right? And you got 20 years for an attempted assault first. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I had a shooting case. Someone was trying to come kill me, and we had a shootout.
And we are about to watch the Connecticut commutation hearing of a man who was sentenced to 38 years in 2008 for a senseless killing of a UConn senior, someone who had run for class president, someone who was doing well in school, someone who worked hard his entire life. As a matter of fact, he had just bought the home that he was found murdered in a few months prior. Now, there are those that say that he was maybe living a double life. He was selling the devil's lettuce. This was set up as a way to rob him of that sale. But look, I'm not into the whole double life thing. When you're selling some devil's lettuce, it's not. I'm not going to take it that far. But neither here nor there. This man, as you heard, this wasn't his first trip at the rodeo. He seems to have quite a long record of horrible crimes, and to think that he was only at the age of 20 and already murdered someone and accused, it seems, of shooting at maybe 2 other people and involved in a third homicide or potential homicide. It's not a pretty sight. Now, he's asking the board to commute his sentence from 38 years to 25 years. His full term date is 2048. So he's trying to shorten that up a little bit. But as you're about to find out from the DA, he's going to get another chance at the apple, another bite at the apple. And that was because he committed this crime at under the age of 21. He was just 20 years old. And in the state of Connecticut, they view that as if you committed a crime when you were under the age of 18. To them, it's all in the same. And I heard that they're trying to pass legislation to cut that threshold to 25 years old. The argument being that your brain is not fully developed. So anyone with a 50-year sentence, even if it was a double homicide or whatnot, would have the opportunity of parole automatically if they were under the age of 21, maybe one day the age of 25. Anyways, I digress. We're about to jump into this commutation hearing. Now, I leave some of the beginning portions when they're just sitting around waiting. I leave that going, and that's because we can hear some of the conversations that's happening between the walls. And I just thought it'd be interesting. And as the saying goes, sometimes the walls have ears, and in this case, that might be true. With that, let's jump in.
Good morning, sir. I'm Jennifer Zaccanini. Is there a CO just outside your door?
Yes.
Can you grab him, please?
Yes.
State's attorney, good look at it.
They want to talk to you. They want to talk to you.
Morning. Good morning. How are you? So
Good and yourself.
But we're getting a lot of background noise. Is there anything you can do about that?
I'm gonna mute it and unmute to see if the feedback can, tone down a little bit. That's the least that I can do.
Okay. Can you mute us for a second?
How about now? Is that better?
You are trash.
It's coming from the other room, I think.
Yeah. So what's happening is we have visiting right now.
Okay.
And then we also have another parole hearing on the other side. So unfortunately, that's just how the rooms are set up. Yeah, unfortunately.
But all the doors are closed?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the best we could do. Okay.
That's the best that I can do.
All right. Okay. We'll be right back in 2 minutes to start.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, violated in 2017, like 8 years ago. I think you still going back and forth to the highway out there. Violated so many times and still, but I put in for my TS for the payment for my brother company. That's why I work too, so hopefully they approve it. Right. Everything can be done. Yeah. They have us here. Yeah, I know it, I just got a number, so I don't know about her. Oh. No. He's fucking police.
Okay, so Mr. Newton, if you have difficulty hearing us at any point, just let us know. And I'm a loud talker, so we'll do our best. Okay.
All right. Yes.
All right. My name is Jennifer Zaccanini. I'm chairperson. And other members of the board today are Robert Sazowskis and Joy Chance. The people of the state of Connecticut have vested the Board of Pardons and Paroles with extraordinary power to grant commutations of punishment, releases, and pardons, conditioned or absolute, for convictions in the state. A commutation, if granted, may result in a reduction of your sentence. The board may also decide to release you from your sentence. In considering if to grant any form of relief, the board looks at, among other things, the nature and seriousness of the crime, its impact on any victims, the length of time that has elapsed since the commission of the crime, any efforts the applicant has made towards rehabilitation during their incarceration, and any compelling or exceptional circumstances. As an applicant to be heard today, please trust that your case has been reviewed thoroughly by the board. I wish you all the best. Officer Bryant will give you further information now.
Yes. Thank you.
Please note, there have been any changes to your conviction status, or you've had any new arrests since filing your application for relief with the board, you must disclose such information to the board today. Additionally,
I haven't.
any form of commutation granted by the board today may be revoked at any time for a good cause shown. As stated by the chair, your application has been fully reviewed by the board. The board is familiar with your case, has read and examined your written submissions, including any written evidence for or against your application for commutation. Panel members have copies of those letters in their files and have completely and thoroughly reviewed those files in preparation for today's hearing. There's no need to repeat what has already been submitted in writing. The purpose of your appearance today is to allow you to make a brief presentation to the board while adding any information that is not already in your file. You are required to tell the board why you are seeking relief. The board may issue a decision to you today. However, you will also receive a letter by mail informing you of the board's decision within 2 weeks. Mr. Newton, as part of your testimony today, you're required to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. The appropriate response to this testament is I do.
I do.
You solemnly swear and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God, or upon the penalty of perjury.
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Newton, please state your name and inmate number for the record.
Nicholas Newton, 329-121.
With the board's permission, you may proceed to explain why you believe you deserve relief.
I'm gonna, before we begin, please, I just want to check, is the Office of Victim Services with us? Are they connected? Kristen, is OVS with us yet?
I do not see anyone from OBS logged on.
Okay, we do have input today, so I'm gonna check with them quickly, just to make sure they don't want to join us.
786.
Okay, OBS is logging in as we speak, so we're going to give them, the Office of Victim Services, a few minutes to join us, okay? Sorry
Yes.
about the delay, Mr. Noon.
It's fine.
I just moved from a new block. I had to reach committee. I don't have accounts. I've been over in this block for 2 weeks now. I went to the account once. We don't have accounts. It's hard. 1 minute it's one person, next minute somebody else. That's also a job for me too. It's why I worked for him before, so if I get my PF.
Mr. Newton, we're all on board now, so please go ahead with your statement. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hello, board members and everyone in attendance. My name is Nicholas Newton. I would like to thank the board members for reviewing my package, giving me the opportunity to speak today, and considering giving me a second chance to be a productive member of society through a commutation. I would like the opportunity to apologize to Vladimir's family and friends. I'm truly remorseful for my role in taking Vladimir's life. During my sentence, you asked me why. I didn't answer. I didn't know how. My actions were unexcusable. Regretfully, I cannot turn back time to that day. I'm truly sorry for the pain my actions have caused you. I'm no longer the same 20-year-old that entered the prison system. I'm no longer subjected to manipulation, a drug user. I no longer have a one-track mind. I'm no longer afraid to ask for help. I don't blame my circumstances as a child or anyone for the choices I made. I hold myself accountable for the choices I make in life now. I don't allow stigmas placed on me or people's view of me to stop who I want to be in life or define who I am. I made significant strides to become the man I am today, and I would like to speak on some of the things that made this transition possible. During the early part of serving my time, I caught a ticket for fighting with the CO. I found myself isolated for 10 months. That's where I started reflecting on my life and asking myself, how did I end up here? And here, there are no drugs to escape reality. I looked at my flaws. Why am I angry? Why did I use drugs? Why did I hurt? I looked at all the people affected by my actions and how it impacted them. So I decided to do better for myself, my son, and my community. I have learned from the programs I have taken, anger management, personal responsibility, domestic violence, as we make bad choices due to our own insecurities. And for me to change my thoughts and actions, it starts with self-awareness. It doesn't matter where you are in life, jail, suburbs, the neighborhood. If I don't have a positive mind frame to do good, I'm not gonna make positive choices. I will end up making the same choices that led me here. I had to recalibrate what I thought life was supposed to be and the bad habits I learned on the way. My best experience was being a teacher's aide. It helped me communicate with people from different backgrounds, races, and different personalities. I recognized when people needed help because it was me sitting there. It helped me relate. And if I could relate with someone's problem, it makes it a little easier to help them. It helped give me self-confidence. I had to work from the bottom to earn an opportunity to work in DLC Industries woodshop, which has been an experience in itself. And those tools continue to help me and can help me help others on my journey. I have family and friends that help with my transition to give me housing. My uncle has a job for me with the painting company. I have plans to open my own business. I have plans to be active in our church programs, especially teen night and summer camp, where I can tell my story and share my experience and give advice. A commutation will help me do those things. It will give me the opportunity to start my life, a shot at redemption. It will help me put the things I've learned into words. It will give me a chance to be a hands-on father, reacclimate myself as a productive member of society. It will give me the opportunity to give back and pay it forward. I would like to thank you for your time, for this hearing, and giving me a voice. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, Mr. Newton, thank you for that statement. This panel has reviewed your case in its entirety. So we have your application. In addition, we have the police report, court transcripts, your records from within the institution. So programming, disciplinary reports as well. We reviewed the summary of your interview with Officer Bryant. So we're very well versed in your case. We do have additional questions. When we're done with our questions, we'll turn to the Office of Victim Services for any input that we have from the victim's family. And then State's Attorney Doyle will have an opportunity to speak. We'll deliberate when it's all done, and we'll give you our decision here today, okay?
Yes,
So, Mr. Newton, you've been incarcerated since 2008, right? So about 16 years?
2009.
Oh, I'm sorry. The offense happened in 2008. So you've been incarcerated since February of 2009. So 16 years, right?
Yes,
16 years of a 38-year sentence. Now, you've acknowledged and admitted that you were the one who committed this murder, right?
yes.
Yeah. And we'll, you know, we can get into the reasons how it all went down, whatever. We're not here to retry the case. But anyhow, you received 38 years. You're asking for a commutation after 16. What do you think is a fair sentence for the crime that you committed?
It's not going to be fair to anybody, but I'm looking for an opportunity to go home and start over. I see 25 being a fair sentence and playing my role. I know there's no time on a life where I can just say, give me this and it makes everything better.
Right.
I'm just looking for a second chance.
Okay. Well, I asked that because in your application, you say multiple times that it was unfair and excessive, and you compared yourself to your co-defendants. But do you understand why your co-defendants got a lesser sentence than you?
Yes,
Okay. All right. And somewhere in there you mentioned your ages as well, but one of your co-defendants was 19. And you were 20 at the time, so you were young. You definitely were young. I'll give you that. You know, our legislature has determined that there will be reconsideration for some cases at your age, but you don't qualify for that. I understand you appealed the case and it was denied, right?
yes.
And your grounds for that was ineffective counsel. Why did you think your counsel was ineffective?
Because he told me he was going to help me. And when it came down to it, he just took money and said, I'm going to give you this time right here. I advise you to take the deal. But before any of that, he said we was going to go to trial. And at first, I just listened to what he was saying because I didn't know any better.
You are trash.
Wait, so you're saying you would have preferred to go to trial?
No, at the time, I didn't know really what was going on. I was trying to get out of it. I felt my lawyer didn't help me at that time. But now I see he tried to do the best he could.
Okay. Okay. I mean, this was a horrible offense. It really was difficult to read. Whose gun were you using?
Gals.
But there were multiple guns, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're saying your co-defendant brought all the guns?
Yes. When I showed up, the guns was already there.
When you showed up I mean, you guys met beforehand, right, to plan this?
No, they called me that morning and told me to get to Poplar Street immediately. So when I showed up, they already had the guns with them.
Okay, so you're saying he handed you the gun and two of you went in with guns?
Yes. Me and Anthony Johnson went in with guns.
Wow. Okay, and I read you thought that the victim was reaching for a gun and that's why you reacted the way you did? So why shoot 3 times?
I was scared. I just started firing. I didn't even know which shot hit him. I didn't. I fired and I ran.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And your victim was how old?
21.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you think about that?
Yes. I stopped him from living his life too. I hurt his family. I understand that.
Yeah. What do you mean you stopped? Oh, you stopped him from living his life too because your life stopped? But you're still living.
My life I'm still living, but
Yeah.
I understand that I stopped him from growing and reaching his full potential.
Yeah. How old is your son now?
He'll be 17 next month.
Uh-oh, we're frozen. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Oh, we froze for a
Yes.
second there. How old is your son?
My son is 16.
16, okay. And you have a good relationship?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you thought about what might lead your son to a similar situation?
Yes. I think about that every day. And I'm grateful
Yeah.
he chooses not to.
Yeah. Okay, so you have participated in some programs. I see anger management, domestic violence, embracing fatherhood. I'm not sure we could call administrative segregation a program because you really shouldn't be there.
No.
No. And what else have you done that we might not know about?
I had tearman jobs, cleaning. I worked in the kitchen before.
Yeah.
Right now I work in the industries where we learn to refurbish furniture. We build kitchens from scratch, bathrooms, court benches we redo.
How long have you been working in the wood shop now?
A little over a year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And you got your, was it a high school diploma or a GED?
GED.
Okay. Congratulations on your GED.
Thank you.
You did have 3 disciplinary reports, one that resulted in outside charges for assault on personnel.
You are trash.
Where you received an additional year. Do you want to talk
Yes.
about that?
I was having an argument with the officer. I was still angry when I came to prison and we couldn't come to terms. So we ended up fighting. And
But
so
what
I
does
wish
that
I-
mean? You couldn't come to terms. I mean, you're not supposed to come to terms with the CO.
I'm
Supposed to
supposed to
listen to
listen to
whatever they
father
tell you.
rules. At
Yeah.
that time, I still didn't listen to authority. At that time, my sins, I still was hard-headed. I still wasn't focused. I just looked at it like my life is over and I'm going to die here. And I was still making bad choices.
Yeah. So what did you do to the CO?
I fought with him. We had a physical altercation.
Wow. I mean, that's some serious lack of impulse control. I mean, you had to know nothing good would come from that.
Yes.
All right. So that was in 2013. 4 years ago in 21, you had a fight in your cell. Why?
I had a celly. Yeah, I tried my best not to fight him. I tried to get moved. We wrote the captain. We tried to get moved, and they didn't move our cell. He just kept wanting to fight. I don't want to fight. I'm kind of done with that those days. He attacked me, and I defended myself. His next celly, he burned off his face with a hot pot and put him in Bridgeport burn unit. I'm grateful that wasn't me. But I didn't want to fight.
Okay. You know, it's a little concerning given your instant offense. Now, outside of this felony murder for which you're asking us to reduce the time, you had other charges, right? And you got 20 years for an attempted assault first. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, I had a shooting case. Someone was trying to come kill me, and we had a shootout.
All right, so you'll have to give us a little more than that, sir. Did you say
I
someone was
apologize.
trying to come and kill you?
Yes, I was standing on my
Why would
front
someone
porch
want to kill you?
because I witnessed a murder in the neighborhood, and he knew that I knew who he was, so he tried to take me out. And Tamika Harris, I drove him to my house, and we had a shootout when I ended up shooting up the car.
Yeah. How many people were in that car?
2.
Wow.
can hear
So you
us
were willing
and
to
the
kill,
offender.
you were willing to kill those two people.
I didn't want to. I was just trying to protect my house, my family, myself.
Under what circumstances did you witness a murder?
On Poplar Street in Fairhaven in 2007.
Yeah. Who was murdered? A friend of yours?
Here's a kid in the neighborhood.
And why were you there?
That's where I used to be at, in the neighborhood, selling drugs, standing on the corner.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. I read that you were a lookout for one of the brothers, one of your co-defendants' brothers, right? That's what you did for
Yes.
work? You were a lookout for a drug dealer?
Yes,
How much money did you make doing that?
maybe a few hundred a week.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like you really weren't doing anything positive at that time, right?
No, I wasn't.
No school, no work.
No.
So now you've learned, right? You've educated yourself
Yes.
in the Department of Correction. You've learned how to work because
Yes.
you have held multiple jobs within the Department of Correction, and for which we know you received little pay, and you're not receiving any good time or any such thing. So your case is not even parole eligible. So you're doing these things really, I would hope, to better yourself.
Yes, and to teach my son that I can still do positive things.
Okay, yeah, that's a good lesson. So when would you say that you started to shift in your mindset and turn it all around?
I want to say about 2014, 15, when I got out of AS, and my son was coming to see me, and I was behind the glass, and he didn't like that, and he was still a child, and had asked me, was I coming to his birthday party? Was I coming to Thanksgiving? And I was telling him no, and I see the pain that it caused him. I see how it's hurting him. It's like, I'm already in trouble. I'm already not there. And I keep putting myself in predicaments to be away from him. I'm now putting a piece of glass between us, even in the visiting room. So I had to do better for him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to see that you've been able to stay out of trouble for quite some time now, and that you are doing good things, because I do believe that you can change and do better. You received excellent work evaluations from all of your supervisors in the facility. We also received letters of support from your family members and friends. So we do recognize that you have support out there in the community. You have a job waiting with a family member, doing painting. So there are some positive things there, you know. I'm not sure it's your time yet, sir, but I hope you'll continue in your pursuits. There's still a lot more that you can do there, right? Because eventually you are going to get out of prison, and you want to be prepared for that transition. What goals do you have long term in life?
Right now, I want to start a family. I want to have my own business. I want to actually teach my son how to be a better person in surviving society. I want to help kids that think the street is the only way, and it is not. It leaves you here. It leaves you in the grave. You hurt yourself. You hurt people. You hurt people that you don't even understand that you're hurting. I want to be a person that helps.
What are you doing now to help people in prison?
Right now, I talk to people. I talk positive to people that's going home. I try to talk to them about my circumstances and teach them, like, you don't want to make this a lifetime thing. If you have a shot to go home, Go home and do better for you. If you say you love your child, you love your family, show them by going home and staying home. Because when you come here, yeah, you're not helping them.
Yeah. Are you still a teacher's aide?
No, I was in Chester's facility
How long did you do that for?
about 2 years.
That's great. All right, thank you for speaking with me. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues and see what questions they have for you. Ms. Chance.
Thank you.
Yes, so Mr. Newton, I would just like to follow up on a couple questions. So you had a street name while you were in the community. What was that name?
What?
You were known by an alias while you were in the community.
My
What
name
was
was
that name?
Cannon. My name
Yeah.
was Cannon.
Yeah, I read that you were referred to as Loose Cannon.
Yes.
And I know when you started your incarceration in 2009, you still refer to that name.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what did that name mean to you when you were in the community?
I would fly off the handles. I would be ready to fight at the drop of a dime. I didn't care. I lived life reckless.
Yeah. And I'm looking at, your dates of incarceration just to show you that, you took part of yourself into prison, and it took you quite a while to begin to make some changes, because you started in 2009, and I'm looking at the period of 2011 to 2017, when there wasn't much that you did. The only thing you got was your GED. So do you think that name played a role in your continued behavior?
Yes, I was trying to live up to something that didn't exist.
And so what was it that made you change and realize that you had to drop that name?
I'm a father. I don't want my son to be in the streets thinking he need a street name or to represent something that doesn't care about him. I had to drop it to become a better person. I had to let people know that's not who I am anymore.
And what brought that change about in you?
That change, it's like I don't want to hurt nobody. It's like I used to enjoy fighting. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. Growing up, I enjoyed it. The street life, I was infatuated with it. It's all I knew since I was 12 years old. But when I decided to be a man, those things, they don't work in the same sense. I can't be a so-called gangster and say I want to raise my son to be a positive person and show him that. So I had to do positive things to show him this is the way to be.
Okay, well, I appreciate you acknowledging that you took it with you, but that you decided to make a change in your life. And that's all positive. I would like to just go back to there was a comment that you made that you said you received 20 more years than your co-defendant, and that's what set this crime into motion. What did you mean by that?
They planned a robbery weeks, days in advance that I knew nothing about. They had broke into the house and set the whole stage up. I didn't know anything about the robbery until that morning when I was called. I didn't know Vladimir. That was my first day ever meeting him. That was their we connect.
Why did you have those rubber gloves on?
I got those from Gail's house. His wife is a nurse.
Why did you think you needed them?
to hide my identity.
And then after you shot the victim, what did you do?
I ran.
Where did you go?
I ran out the house. I ran through the yards. I ran home. I just stayed there.
You
I
didn't
went
go to
there,
Florida?
I ended up there later on. I didn't immediately leave to Florida. I ran home. I was in smoking weed, drinking. When I heard the police was looking for me, that's when I went to Florida.
So when they finally caught up with you and you were asked about the shooting, why didn't you at that time just acknowledge that you did it?
I don't know. I just wanted to run from it. I wanted to hide from it. I didn't want to take responsibility. I didn't want to take the blame. So I lied.
And when did you come to the realization that you needed to take responsibility for it?
Around the same time I knew it was time to grow up, when I started making my change, I can't say I'm going to grow up and still lie about things. I have to accept the truth. I have to accept accountability. I have to take responsibility to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and that took you a while. Because just hearing or reading about some of the things that you did, you know, the fact that you not only got your high school diploma, but that you took that drug and alcohol program through the Stratford Career Institute. And
Yes.
that you have a few certificates, you know, the advanced business education technology and the embracing fatherhood and child psychology. And that you put yourself on the list for the culinary arts program, the Serve Save certification. So I see that, you know, there's some signs of change. But I really have to be honest with you, Mr. Newton. I think you need some more time to continue to do some of the things that you're doing. I look at your program waiting list and, you know, you have an addiction services, you have alternative to violence, voices, and then the new thought program, which used to be the good intention, bad choices. So I think, you know, with some more time and you taking those courses, I think you, you know, would set yourself up to be a really good influence when you go back in the community. What do you think?
I understand that. I wouldn't mind doing those programs. Those programs I will only get if I get closer to my parole date or closer to release date. Most people that get those programs have 2 years or less. So I won't get into those programs for another 20 years.
But I'm sure that there are other ways that you can get around it. You did the domestic violence in 2023.
I paid for that course. That's outside of the DOC.
Oh, you did that outside. Okay.
That class, personal responsibility, I paid for those courses.
Well, the other good thing is, you know, your job assignments, which Madam Chair spoke about before. So those are all positive things that you're doing. And I wondered, you know, in your application, when you were asked to describe, you know, compelling circumstances to get a commutation today, you had a whole slew of things listed. Do you think those things are all valid now in your request for a commutation?
Excuse me?
Do you think all those reasons that you wrote in your application are still valid as compelling circumstances? And I can just mention a few if you
Yes.
prefer, if you'd like. So
I know.
you know,
Yes. I believe them programs help me. They help shape me into who I am. And they help me help other people when I was a business teacher aide. So I believe those skills, I still use them today. If I get into a disagreement with somebody, I use my skills. I talk to somebody before we even talk about fighting or think about fighting. If we can't get along, we're still men at the end of the day. We don't have to agree on everything, but we don't have to do violence to each other either. We could just go our separate ways. So I use the tools that I learned. Even with my job, like if I go work with my uncle, I'm gonna be using table saws at the paint company. I'm gonna be using sanders, cutting wood. These techniques will help me.
do you think, one last question, Mr. Newton? One of the compelling reasons, circumstances that you said was your co-defendants placed all the blame on you. Was
Yes.
that a fair statement? And do you still think that's true today?
I feel they did blame everything on me. They made it seem like I set all this up. They made it seem like I called Vladimir and I'm the one that pulled the trigger. I take the responsibility, yes. It is my fault Vladimir is gone. I take full responsibility for that. I showed up, I pulled that trigger. That is my fault.
Right.
I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, but my understanding is even if you thought they set it up, you were the one with the gun, you shot the victim, and then you were telling one of your co-defendants to shoot. Basically, all they said they wanted to do was to get the weed and leave. So they never denied that they participated in it.
Yes.
And so I asked out of concern because I'm wondering if you still have animosity towards them.
No, I take full responsibility for that. I don't hold animosity to anybody. If I never got up that morning, if I didn't respond to that phone call, those are the choices I had at that time that I could have made, and I didn't. So I have to take responsibility for that. I can't blame them for telling. I can't blame them for calling me. I have to accept everything that I did that day.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions, Mr. Newton.
You're welcome.
I'll just add, Mr. Newton, because I'm not sure you're aware, but Mr. Gale admitted to planning this event. Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, so your claim that they blamed you for everything really would not hold true. He admitted that he was the planner of this whole event. Okay, Mr. Stazauskas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. Newton.
Good morning.
So my colleagues have asked most of the questions that I wanted to talk about. Just a couple of things. Do people still call you Cannon now in the facility? They still use that name toward you?
Not everybody. A couple people that come to jail that I know from the neighborhood, they would still call me Cannon, but I correct them. I will let them know that's not who I am anymore.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I think it's time to reinvent yourself away from that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, you talked with the rubber gloves a little bit, and you said that one of your co-defendants, family members gave those to. Were they wearing gloves? The other two co-defendants?
Yes. And then,
So
Gail wasn't, Johnson was. Anthony Johnson was, Gail wasn't.
Okay. And you said that you did it because you wanted to conceal your identity.
Yes.
Was your face covered?
Yes.
So you wore a mask during this?
Yes.
He never saw your face ever, the victim.
Yes, he did. My mask ended up coming off. He ended up seeing my face. My mask came off.
Were all three of you wearing masks or just you?
No. Gail had sat down and lured him in as a regular person. And Gail was supposed to pretend that he didn't know me or Johnson when we came into the room.
Okay.
So
I understand.
yes.
So, and then one of the other things that you said today and then in your application, you talked about being a follower, that you were following along with other people. But, from all the statements I read, you were like ordering one of the co-defendants to shoot him, like you were kind of in charge of the situation. I didn't find that as being a follower. Do you remember telling your co-defendant to shoot him in the leg?
I know he said that, but I didn't tell him to shoot him. There was no time for that. When I seen Vladimir move and I felt he was reaching for a gun, I automatically just pulled the trigger and ran. I didn't order anybody to do anything.
Right. Yeah. So that's the next question I have was about this gun situation with the victim. I read in your statements, you're kind of indicating that the victim was armed and that you saw a gun. But I don't see that anywhere else in any of the documents. So I'm trying to sort that out in my mind. Why you are the only one that saw a gun and you said it was a BB gun. Where can you just talk about that?
They I guess they continued with the robbery after I left. And when they had his bag, they said it was a gun on him, and they said it was a BB gun. That's what they told me. But when he reached for his hip, when he got up, I fired. He jumped up, he said it's not going down like this, and I panicked.
I read that, but the part that I want to know about is you claiming that you saw a handgun before you shot him. Did you see him with a handgun before you shot him?
I seen him reach for his hip. I can't say for sure that it was a full gun there, but I seen him reach. And
okay, so he was reaching toward his belt line, but you did not see a gun sticking out of his belt.
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get to. That was the part that I was just trying to work through. And then, how you came up with the idea that it was a BB gun when there's no mention of any of that anywhere else. I just wanted to clear up some of the facts. So it looks like also we didn't really talk a lot about your drug problem before. You have a DOC drug score of a 3 and 5 is the highest. It looks like you had a significant problem, earlier in your life with PCP, ecstasy, marijuana. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're on the wait list for addiction services. That's a DOC program. That's, like those are more intensive programs that really address the underlying issues. But you did register you did take it upon yourself to register for, it looks like an outside substance abuse program. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just talk about how that helped you? What did you learn from that outside program? I'm not familiar with it.
I learned from that program because I used to just think, oh, I'm getting high, I'm just enjoying myself. I used to just think this is it. When I start reading that package and it's telling me about addiction and going through withdrawals and being irritable, and I noticed a lot of those symptoms I was going through. Like I was popping 6 E-pills a day without even realizing it. Like I'm just chasing a high. And that program, it helped me realize that, like, I never knew, I never said I was an addict. I said I'll quit tomorrow. I can quit this if I want to. And it wasn't the case. I depended on those drugs. I became drug dependent.
So you also mentioned that somewhere I read that you didn't think when you got out that you would need to be in any kind of substance abuse treatment, like in the community. Do you think that's still true, that you're going to be okay and not require any substance abuse treatment or support in the community?
Yes. I haven't used drugs this long, My system is clean. I don't want to put it back in my system. I made some of the worst choices on drugs. And it hit who I was. Like, if I thought I was happy, I really wasn't. I'm on drugs. So if I can be happy without them, I don't need them. I got family members that she gotta get her kidney she gotta get her kidney switched out every few years. So if my son ever needed an organ or something, I want to be able to supply it. But because I want to be selfish and be high and use drugs, I want to be able to give him a functioning organ because of my own temptations.
Okay. All right, so this is just really the last question. My colleagues have asked all the other things that I had written down here. And so, you know, one of the things you mentioned that you believe is, you know, a compelling reason for you to, a compelling circumstance for you to receive a commutation was that you were 20 years old at the time. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So your sentence was 38 years, and like you said today and in your paperwork, you thought that 25 years would be more appropriate. Do you think that anyone that's 20 years old and, you know, commits a murder should only be sentenced to 25 years? Is that your argument?
No, I don't believe that. I just believe I made significant changes to give me a second chance. And I'm looking for an opportunity to do that. Because I believe I can do better than what I did. I believe I can do better for my community than what I did with that time. Even that time would give me a little bit more time to complete more programs if my time was reduced to that, because I'll be closer to the door.
I mean, I do think you're on the right track and on the road to rehabilitation. I mean, your last disciplinary report was 4 years ago. I understand the circumstances of that fight. You've explained them. But I do think you're on the right path. You know what I mean? I think there's still some more programming. There's still some more programming that you need to complete, like my colleagues have said. And regardless of what happens today, I encourage you to keep staying positive and doing what you're doing right now, and try to get longer stretch under your belt of time that you could point to without any problems. Do you know what I'm saying? But I hear in your voice that you want to change and that you're doing the right kinds of things. So I want you to try to stay positive, okay? So that's all I have today, sir. Good luck to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we will ask the Office of Victim Services to provide any input that they have. Mr. Jesus, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, board members. Good morning, Chair. I do have a brief statement. It reads as follows. My name is Roman, and I am the older brother of Vladimir. I would like to tell you about him. He was funny, kind, respectful, quiet, and a smart person. He was attending UConn, majoring in political science. He was also the president of his class. I love and miss him very much, but Mr. Newton decided to cut his life short, causing our family pain, trauma, and suffering. I would like to ask that he should serve the rest of his sentence in prison. Thank you. That's all I have, board members.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll ask Attorney Doyle to introduce himself and give a statement. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you to the board, and thank you and to Mr. Newton allowing me to be here today. I know the board's got. I'm sorry, I apologize. I couldn't hear. There was some backdrop there.
Can you state your name and juris number for the record?
Sure. John P. Doyle Jr. I'm the state's attorney for the Judicial District in New Haven, and my juris number is 415543. And again, thank you to the board and good morning to the board and Mr. Newton. I know that the board, I have Mr. Newton's commutation packet and everything he provided. I also have his arrest warrant. I have transcripts of Mr. Newton's plea and eventual sentencing. Pardon me. I also have the transcript of his co-defendants' pleas and sentencings. And I also believe, and I believe the board has most of this, if not all of this. I have his correctional history and I have his background and I have the arrest warrants And if the board doesn't have any of that, I'll be happy to provide it or send it along. But there's some additional information that I want to give, but I'm going to try not to repeat what I believe the board knows. There's some factors that I think that are important that the board needs to weigh before it exercises its extraordinary power given it to by the legislature and deciding to exercise its commutation power in regards to Mr. Newton. I'm not going to compare that power to the power under other statutes, such as 54-125A, or, the authority that the board has to issue pardons or to just issue regular parole for regular inmates. But I'm just talking in regards to this commutation power and how it affects Mr. Newton. As what was alluded to here today, I think there's important dates to know is that Mr. Newton's date of birth, as far as I'm able to determine, is 1988. And the incident that is his controlling sentence occurred August 21st, 2008. So I'll defer to the Board of Correction, the Board and Department of Corrections. But it appears to me that Mr. Newton was 20 years old and 15 days at the date of the incident that is his controlling sentence. So I also believe the board is well aware that under 54-125A, at some point in the future, he will become eligible under that statute to apply for early parole categorization based upon his age. I'm not going to belabor the law on what that is, because I know each and every one of you on the board sits on those hearings and are well familiar with those statutes. But what I would indicate here is that is something that, regardless of whatever the board does today, Mr. Newton will be statutorily eligible to apply for that consideration. I don't like a commutation. I don't even think it's something that he has to apply for. I think he will be screened and advised that there is the eligibility for that. Or at some point, some attorney will come along and advise him that he's eligible for that. Be that as it may, by my calculations, at some point when he is now, as the chairman pointed out, he's 16 years into a 38-year sentence. And at 22.8 years, he may be eligible under 54-125A, which is approximately 6.5 years from now.
Right.
And it's the state of Connecticut's position that whether he gets that part or not, whatever happens today, if this board was to commute any sentence, all we're doing is moving that threshold a little closer. And if you change the sentence at all, we're going to be back here at another panel or another proceeding where he's going to apply for that. And by Mr. Newton's own accord, not that I agree with him, his position is he should be doing at least 25 years. And if we get to that point, it's going to be at 22.8 years, which I'll be back, or somebody in my office will be back to address that in the future. But there's other factors that I need to point out. I'm not going to go into everything about the homicide of Vladimir Voynev, who was a young man who was who lived in New Haven and went to high school in New Haven, who was able to get to a situation where he excelled in school, as his family pointed out, got himself into UConn and was a student there, but would also return home to the city of New Haven. This wasn't a situation where the defendant and his co-defendants targeted just some individual. They knew him. They knew what was involved with him, or at least some of the co-defendants did. At the time, putting aside Mr. Voynev's murder there at one point, of which you heard the statement from his older brother, but unfortunately his mother, who addressed the court before Judge Fasano at his sentencing in a very emotional sentencing proceeding, passed away several years ago. So she's not able here to be able to address the board. Mr. Newton is not only serving the sentence for the murder involving Mr. Voynev. At the same time, he was also sentenced. And whether or not that sentence is completed or not, we need to look at the whole factors of this. Not only was he convicted of Mr. Voynev, he was also convicted, as some of the board members act, of a separate attempted shooting of 2 other individuals. And that was a young woman, and I believe that you have the arrest warrant for that, but it's also reflected in the PSI, where there was a vehicle that Mr. Newton had fired at. That was also activity that occurred around the same time of this. And I want to point out the dates. August 29, 2008 is the situation where that young woman was fired at in that particular vehicle. August 21, 2008, the week earlier, was the homicide of Mr. Voynev. So after that homicide, the situation where we're talking about where the Mr. Newton is giving you some information and background or his view of that. And somehow how the co-defendants who set up this robbery, and I have no doubt that it occurred. But as at that point there, Mr. Newton had already killed Mr. Voynev, fled the scene of that location, was now out there being investigated by the New Haven Police Department and others, but then gets involved in this separate shooting incident thereafter. So we also have somebody who 7 or 8 years later probably knows by now that he's responsible for the homicide of another individual, but he's still armed with a gun and he's still shooting at other people, potentially murdering 2 other people. But we also have to step over to a fact which I don't believe the board is aware of, or perhaps you're not. And if you are not, at some point in the future, I will provide you with this information. On June 4th of 2007 in the city of New Haven, one Julian Ellis was also the victim of a homicide in the city of New Haven. And as part of that case, the investigation showed and testimony at trial showed is that Mr. Newton arrived at that location with Mr. Jackson, who was eventually convicted of that murder. Pardon me, that being the matter of Troy Jackson. Mr. Cole arrived to him at the location. Mr. Cole and 2 others acted as lookouts for each respective party, where there was an argument and a scuffle, and then handguns went off, and yet another murder was committed in the city of New Haven. While this matter was pending, and while Mr. Newton had his own criminal cases pending, that being the murder he's responsible for, the attempted assault 1, Mr. Newton had already provided a statement to the New Haven Police Department regarding the homicide of Julian Ellis. While his matter was pending, Judge Fasano, the judge who sentenced Mr. Newton, and the state and his attorney worked out a situation where he would be able to cooperate regarding the statement he already gave. So he's going to be sentenced on his murder, attempted on his assault 1. And as you see in the transcript, there's a reflection there that there was going to be a range of 32 to 38 years for Mr. Newton if he was to go into court and testify, consistent to the statement he had given to the New Haven police regarding the homicide of Julian Ellis that had been committed by Troy Jackson. Thereafter, he was sentenced to 38 years with an understanding that he may be able to apply for a sentence modification, and Judge Fasano would consider reducing that sentence had he cooperated with the state in regards to that homicide. Not only did Mr. Newton not cooperate with that homicide, he attempted to go up there and tank that murder trial by now testifying in the case that he was present at the homicide of Julian Ellis. But contrary to the statement he had given to the New Haven Police Department previously, and contrary to the statement that he also gave to this office in the New Haven Police Department the day he pled on his own matters, he then went up on Mr. Jackson's trial and indicated, well, I was there, but I didn't see Mr. Jackson. So in an attempt to aid Mr. Jackson, another one of his cohorts and his friends also involved in committing murders in the city of New Haven, Mr. Newton decided that while his own matters were pending, the right thing for him was to not accept responsibility for his own homicide because he wants to point to his co-defendants, but to also not accept the agreement that he made, the recommendation he made from the court, and actually go up and give some solace, some sense of justice to the family of Julian Ellis by indicating, testifying to what he observed in regards to that homicide. And I think the board should take that into account as well in this matter. So not only was he involved in his own homicide, his own attempted shooting, he was also involved in another murder that he had been observed and involved with. I get that we have to take into account when there's young men who come into the criminal justice system. I get that we have to balance their behavior, their activities, their mindset, their background. I noted in the PSI there was a one point along the sentencing there, Mr. Newton attributed a lot of his background and his issues to lack of a father figure. And at some point it was noted, and I'll stand corrected, it was a point where indicated that a lot of the responsibilities were his mother not bringing up the best upbringing as well. And then at some point acknowledging in the future that that wasn't really his mother's fault. It was more of Mr. Newton not accepting responsibilities for him, some of his behaviors. But when we still have an individual here now who, in regards to the homicide of Mr. Voynev, is making an attempt to blame the co-defendants who set up the robbery, the law in the state of Connecticut is very clear that whether the moment to commit the intention to commit a murder occurs pre-planned over days before or is instantaneous, Mr. Newton in this situation arrived with a handgun, arriving with gloves, made the decision to fire into the chest of Mr. Voynich, killing him in that apartment. And that is what he is serving a sentence for. His efforts to deflect and not take responsibility fully, other than to say, I'll accept responsibility, but not for all that I did, because some other people were involved in this, but I'll accept my part, but then also attempt to deflect onto others, is something that also should be taken into account. So on behalf of the State Attorney's Office, I would ask you to take all these matters into account. And again, I do think it's noted, it is important to note that whatever you do here today, if you decided to commute it, it's just moving up that juvenile parole eligibility. I refer to it as juvenile parole eligibility, but we're talking about 23-169 codified at 54-125A, and which he's going to be eligible to apply for in 6 years. So those are my comments, and thank you for allowing me to address you today.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Doyle. So just for clarification purposes on the record, he does not qualify for Public Act 23-169 at this time because your offense has to be committed and you have to be convicted prior to October of 2005. So he does not qualify at this time. Sir, we're going to enter into deliberation at this time. We'll discuss your case and we'll come back to you with our decision. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we certainly appreciate the input from the Office of Victim Services and the State's Attorney's Office. Mr. Newton has applied for a commutation of the felony murder case alone. I'm assuming because he's almost done with the other ones. But anyhow, he has a 1-year consecutive for assault on personnel. He's been in, as I noted, 16 years of a 38-year sentence. There was an unfortunate loss of life here, a tragic loss of life here. This is not a parole hearing. It's not a juvenile reconsideration hearing. This is a commutation hearing. I certainly don't want to take away from Mr. Newton's efforts. He has participated in programming that he himself paid for. He does have disciplinary reports that are concerning, but there's 3, and there has been some progress in the past 4 years. He's been working. He has a lot of support. These are all typical things that we expect to see in a parole hearing, in a parole case. For today's purposes, we really are looking for something exceptional and compelling, not something that we would expect from every inmate in the Department of Correction. So certainly I do appreciate that there is some change in Mr. Newton. There is growth, and I hope that growth continues. I think there's definitely more work to be done. Certainly behavioral issues, there's more progress to be made as far as time elapse goes. But at this time, I do not find that there are any exceptional or compelling circumstances. I don't find that his sentence was unfair or excessive, given that someone was murdered, someone lost their life. So I would not be in favor of any type of reduction in the sentence at this point. Ms. Chance.
I absolutely agree with everything you said, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Sazowskis?
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that jumped out to me was when I was reading through this, I'm looking for some, exceptional and compelling circumstances throughout this documentation. One of the things he said in his writing here, he said that, he sees the victim reach for his waist where I saw the handle of a gun. And then, so there's like a somewhat claim of self-defense here. And then when further questioning in the hearing today, he's, moving away from that and says, no, I did not see that. So, I couldn't find any, exceptional, compelling circumstances in any of this or in our interview. So I agree with the both of you.
Yeah. I think it's also important to note that his co-defendants just finished their sentences last year.
They did all their time.
It's just too soon for us to be here. Yeah. Okay, in the matter of Nicholas Newton, MA number 329121, I'll move to deny the application for commutation, as I find there's no exceptional or compelling circumstances to warrant commutation of the felony murder sentence. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Newton, keep doing what you're doing. It's just too soon for us to consider anything, okay? We
All right,
wish you the
thank you.
best. Thank you.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you, Attorney Doyle. Thank you to the Office of Victim Services.
Thank you.
And they denied, and I gotta say, I love this ADA who shows up and speaks. He seems to be very fluent in his cases. We've seen him before. You might recognize his voice and his style. I know it's hard when you can't see someone's face, but we do have a few hearings that, as of this moment, I haven't published yet, but it's waiting to be published, where he has represented clients or spoken on behalf of the victims, even when the clients aren't there, I should say, when he's represented the state, and he does it well. And there's just something so tragic about this case. You hear about mom who maybe died of a broken heart, and the brother who had to leave that note, and it's just so senseless. The entire thing is so senseless, and in regards to like parole hearings that we've seen or commutation hearings, and it was also interesting that as of today, he's not qualified for the Act 23169 hearing, which is interesting. I thought that he was, but I guess it's kind of like a rounding error on the dates, but I could imagine that eventually something will be passed where he will become eligible, especially if they're trying to push for the age of 25. But you just find out how long and vicious his record was, and it was interesting how he's trying to skip around the fact that, I didn't, the police got me in Florida. Yeah, and he went on a high-speed chase. It just makes you wonder how much violence he might have been involved in. It's not every day you get caught your first time killing someone. You hear that he's in shootouts. I was confused, actually, if there was a third shootout that he was involved in, or if the woman that he shot at was the second one, or if there was actually a third. And one would think that if you're so quick to pull in a gun and blasting someone, he came there with gloves on. He came there. Now you might argue if you come there with a mask and with gloves, maybe that's proof that you don't intend to kill him. Because look, well, certainly the mask part, right? If you're going to wear a mask, then probably you don't intend to kill someone, because that's why you're wearing a mask. But I don't really buy it. I just don't. Imagine doing a robbery and putting gloves on beforehand. The whole idea of robbing a dealer is that the guy's not going to call the cops. It's part of the game. And we're talking about the devil's lettuce, for God's sakes. I mean, we don't know how much it was, but we just covered a case last night. It's on Mandoo 1 under the Illinois channel, where someone was killed, two 20-year-olds, a boy and a girl. One was shot in the back, the other shot in the face, over 2 ounces of the devil's lettuce. 2 ounces. And it's just such a waste. Pisses me off. This guy's dangerous. He just gives me the danger vibes. There's something with his energy that doesn't feel right. And you can't release someone who's so violent, who has such a long violent history. Again, there's no reason to shoot him. Oh, I thought he was going for a gun. BS. I don't buy that for a second. I think that it's just, you get in the habit of shooting people. Life is cheap, and why not? It felt cool. And he was even telling his co-defendants, shoot him, probably because he wanted to just have others involved. It would help him in some way. I can read to you a little bit what Lady Holly found about the victim. He was 21 years old. Okay, so UConn spokesman confirmed that Voynov was entering his senior year as a political science major. He also managed to accomplish a lot in a typical day. He He worked at the Wally Avenue Blockbuster store in Westville for years as a supervisor. Remember Blockbuster? In addition to his classes at UConn, he ran for the student body president, finishing 3rd. His brother said in his statement that he was president. Maybe he was at some point. Maybe the spokesman's wrong. According to Mandoo, he edited a website called Inpolitically Correct. I like that website name. This paper's sole goal shall be to promote dialogue of subject that have been driven from the realm of American politics with a simple term, politically incorrect. He wrote in the site's mission statement that the terms have become synonymous with racist and oppressive and sensitive. This cannot go on. It's a long article. I'm not going to go through all of it. There are people who are writing basically like he documented his life on Facebook, as many do, and this story was well known in Connecticut when you have a senior with a lot going for him that is killed. And there were, he did write like blog posts or Facebook posts saying, hey, I know what I'm doing is dangerous. If I die, that's fine. I'm in it for the game, as long as my friends find out who did it, or as long as, justice is done, in so many words. And I just, again, as a people at young age, they think they're tough, or they talk tough to sound cool, but he didn't have a gun on him. He was literally selling the devil's lettuce, and it got him killed. Lady Holly has here more information if you're curious about his co-defendants. So again, he has his 45-year sentence. His full term is 2054. Unless something changes, he's going to do all 2054, but I doubt it. He's actually, to his credit, he has a job. He's paid for programs. He's trying to do some stuff, it seems, instead of, just doing nothing at all. But he also picked up a felony while locked up. On August 20, 2010, petitioner sentenced to 20 years suspended after 18 with 5 years probation. So this is, I think, his code suspended 5 years probation on the manslaughter conviction. The convictions were ordered to run consecutive to each other for a total effective of 30 years, suspended after 18 years, followed by 5 years probation. That's interesting. I mean, according to this document, he's not going to serve all that time. Total effective, maybe he's only getting 30 years, not getting 45 years. Okay. So this entire thing was to try to get 5 years off his sentence. But what we have seen? We have seen commutation hearings. I'll tell you, we played it. We have seen commutation hearings where someone goes and gets commuted, and then all of a sudden that puts him in the percentage-wise to become eligible for parole. So there's a trick to do that too. And we've seen it happen. They'll go through the commutation process. The board would say, you're commuted. And then the guy shows up 6 months later for parole. And what you can imagine that does to the victims. We played it recently. I'll try to remember to put it in the description if you want to see that. The parole board was not amused. They were pissed off. So let's see. And that could be possible. That could be part of it. Now, the other dude got 18 years. Holly thinks that he's out. So victims doing to kill him, 2 other dudes shooter. He took pleaded for 32 years. Not sure how he ended up with 39 according to prison records. I don't know. It could be that this person actually the 45 years. So this is his co-defendant. Sorry. But anyways, I digress. There are some appeals from the co-defendants, but it doesn't go into any of the details of the crime. But I don't think that that's relevant anyways. Here we have it, just a waste of life and a life wasted. And it was interesting how this guy actually said that in his parole hearing. He's like, what do you say that both our lives were wasted? And I'm happy the parole board called him out. It's like, you're still alive. Like, how can you say both your lives were wasted? And it's your doing. There's no reason to pull the trigger. It's this gun culture thing. And I'm a Second Amendment person. That has nothing to do with this gun culture craziness where people, they think they're so tough. Then they put a tattoo of an eye drop on their arm. It's like, you're not tough. You're a coward. You're shooting people. Why? Oh, that makes you so tough to shoot an unarmed individual. 3 verse 1. He would have given you the devil's lettuce happily. He would not have called the cops. It would have been a scary come to Jesus moment. Everything would have been okay. But no, you're a tough guy. You got to shoot him. So go do your time. With that, I'll let you go.
I would like to tell you about him. He was funny, kind, respectful, quiet, and a smart person. He was attending UConn, majoring in political science. He was also the president of his class. I love and miss him very much, but Mr. Newton decided to cut his life short, causing our family pain, trauma, and suffering. I would like to ask that he should serve the rest of his sentence in prison. Thank you.